Our preaching text today is from the first book of Kings. Then David slept with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. The time that David reigned over Israel was 40 years. He reigned 7 years in Hebron and 33 years in Jerusalem. So Solomon sat on the throne of his father David, and his kingdom was firmly established. Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of his father David. Only he sacrificed and offered incense at the high places. The king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the principal high place. Solomon used to offer 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask what I should give you." And Solomon said, "You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant, my father David, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart toward you. And you have kept for him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne today. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, although I am only a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in. And your servant is in the midst of the people whom you have chosen, a great people, so numerous they cannot be numbered or counted. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, able to discern between good and evil. For who can govern this, your great people?" It pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this. Sisters and brothers, in our preaching text, we hear how King Solomon in a dream is granted a wish by God. Solomon asked God for an understanding mind, also translated as an understanding heart. God grants this wish. But before we examine this request, a question for us this morning. If God appeared to us in our sleep tonight and asked us what we might like to receive as a gift, what would we ask for? Would we ask for power and riches? Would we ask for health and long life? If we had to choose something for ourselves alone, and not something for others, what would we choose? I'd like us to seriously ponder this question. My beloved Beth answered that she would wish for joy and health for the both of us. When I reminded her that she had to ask for something only for herself, she said she would not do that. So feel free to amend my question as you see fit. But what might you ask for? Maybe God only shows up in our dreams when we know what we will ask for. I know there are many things I could ask of God. But at this point in life, what I'd most ask for would be the ability to more easily forgive others as well as myself. I'd ask for a forgiving heart. You see, forgiveness is difficult for me. And I know this admission, this confession, might be surprising, since as a long-time clergy person, I should be a fountain of forgiveness. But I fear I'm not. I applaud the concept of forgiveness. And in my former ministry, I celebrated forgiveness with thousands upon thousands in the sacrament of confession. But I fear I'm not very good at forgiveness myself. Perhaps it comes from being Irish. I believe we Irish are not so good at forgiving. We are also not very good at forgetting. And perhaps that's what happens when people are brutally oppressed for centuries. My Irish side finds it hard to forgive the English for their history of cruelty in Ireland. And this creates dissonance in me, because I am both Irish and English. As I've written, within me lives both oppressor and oppressed. And oppressed people throughout time typically have a heightened awareness of injustice. But perhaps my lack of forgiveness is not so broad and historical. Perhaps my lack results from my childhood, which was less than ideal. I remember watching the families portrayed on television, such as Father Knows Best, Leave It to Beaver, and even The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, and wondering why my family wasn't like the families on television. And many in my age group had similar experiences. Sisters and brothers, I'm not sure why forgiveness is hard for me, but I stand in need of being better at forgiveness, especially since our God is so incredibly forgiving, as I wrote about a couple weeks ago in the advance. So when God comes to me in a dream and asks what I wish, I'll tell God I seek a forgiving heart. I believe God will be pleased with my request, just as God was pleased at Solomon's request for an understanding heart. Forgiveness is so very much needed in our world today. As Dr. Fred Luskin, the director of the Stanford Forgiveness Project, notes, we're experiencing the consequences of a culture that is excessively angry. There is such damage done to relationships, people, and health through anger, blame, and a kind of self-righteous aggression. We live in a culture that's stressed and angry. People are hungering for solutions. A corrective has to emerge. And the most complete, strongest corrective is forgiveness. Brothers and sisters, We cannot easily continue living in the pressure cooker of rage and resentment that our culture has created for us. We need to change our culture. And I don't mean changing our culture in terms of any of the so-called culture wars presently occurring. We must seek antidotes to the rage roaring around us. And I believe forgiveness is the best antidote. There's a definition of forgiveness that's been going around for some time now. Forgiveness is giving up all hope for a better past. This, for me, sums up what forgiveness is really about. Forgiveness doesn't mean everything is all right. Forgiveness doesn't mean an injustice wasn't committed. Forgiveness doesn't mean the perpetrator of the injustice or the abuse should not suffer legitimate consequences. What forgiveness means is that we refuse to create our identity around our grievance. Forgiveness means we don't create a grievance identity or a victim identity for ourselves. Forgiveness means we give up the debilitating process of blaming, pointing a finger at those we believe are to blame for the problems we face. And yes, there are people we can blame. But blaming doesn't often lead to a solution. Blaming doesn't often lead to healing. Blaming doesn't lead to good and godly politics. Blaming wastes our precious time and our precious energy. Sisters and brothers, forgiveness means we refuse to be tied to an eye for an eye. We live in a world that believes too strongly in an eye for an eye. As the saying attributed to Mahatma Gandhi asserts, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Jesus himself teaches us in Matthew's Gospel, "You have heard that the law says, 'Take an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth.' But I tell you, do not fight with anyone who does wrong to you. If someone hits you on one side of your face, turn the other side to him also." Difficult words for us to take to heart. But we must. We must take them to heart if we desire to have a future worthy of hope. If our God is a forgiving God, which I heartily believe, then we should become people of great forgiveness, believing in a God of great forgiveness. And I, for one, know I have work still to do to fashion a fully forgiving heart. So I know what I'll ask for. What will you ask for when God seeks to give you a gift? Please give this question some thought. It's an important one. You can let me know what you come up with if you wish to share it. So now let's go on to Solomon and his gift of an understanding heart. Solomon, as we know, was the third king of a united Israelite kingdom, following in the footsteps of his father David. But the truth is, both David and Solomon were, to put it kindly, morally challenged. David, as we know, had Uriah, the husband of Bathsheba, killed, so he could take her as one of his wives. We know that on David's deathbed, he commanded his son Solomon to kill off a number of David's enemies. Solomon killed them off. Solomon also killed one of his brothers. Solomon took 700 women for wives and an additional 300 women as concubines, some of whom he allowed to worship other gods in Jerusalem. So I ask, where was Solomon's vaunted wisdom? I don't see it. And because of Solomon's allowing idolatry, the northern kingdom becomes divided upon his death into the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. This is not a wonderful legacy. Solomon begins his reign by assassinating his father's enemies, as well as one of his brothers, and ends his reign by disobeying the Torah and marrying many foreign wives who helped turn his heart to idolatry. Even the Bible notes the Lord was angry with Solomon. Actually, all of the kings of Israel and most of the kings of Judah were judged by the Bible to be awful. This is why the prophets arose looking for the day when God would assume kingship, when God's reign of peace and love would come upon the earth. Since the kings were so bad and so corrupt, only God could rightly and justly shepherd the people. And as Christians, we believe Jesus is the reign of God made flesh. As Christians, we believe Jesus is the reign of God come to life. So, sisters and brothers, we need to take the acclaimed wisdom of Solomon with a grain of salt. But having said this, I'd like to say a few words about wisdom. I'd like to suggest what I believe is the heart of wisdom. Wisdom, to use the words of the spiritual author and clergy person Frederick Buechner, wisdom is living our lives from the inside out rather than from the outside in. I believe the process of living our lives from the inside out rather than from the outside in means we don't allow the world or anyone but God to teach us or tell us who we are. It means becoming grounded in the good and godly wisdom of our own hearts, and allowing that true wisdom to lead us and guide us. Too many of us, brothers and sisters, live our lives reacting to things that happen to us, instead of allowing our inner wisdom to guide our talk and our action. The truth is, God has granted each of us the gift of an understanding heart. The truth is, God has granted each of us the gift of wisdom, if we but prayerfully and quietly access it. This I believe deeply. I'll speak more about this inherent wisdom and how to access it on the Sunday of our fall festival, September 16th, when we return to the sanctuary. So this is a bit like the coming attractions at the movies. I end with something for us to ponder from Buchner. He writes, "Listen to your life. See it for the fathomless mystery it is. In the boredom and pain of it, no less than in the excitement and gladness of it. Touch, taste, smell your way to the holy and hidden heart of your life. Because in the last analysis, all moments are key moments, and all life is grace." Amen.